me tell you about a friend. It's Craig LeBlanc where the good times never end. Talking Parks and Rec, it's a show you gotta know. Welcome one and all to the Daily Parks and Rec Show. It's the Daily Parks and Rec Show.
Becoming a director and executive, you're always learning. And I had to learn early on that mistakes happen. I had to learn how to address that properly, how to work with the staff to make sure that didn't happen again, depending on the level of mistake, or what they can learn, as opposed to immediately reacting, going, how did you screw that up? I gave you that responsibility. As you progress, I think there's a lot of people that may have natural leadership traits, but you still got to learn to develop it.
Welcome to the Daily Parks and Rec Show, where we celebrate the people who build, protect, and inspire our public spaces. Today's guest is Daniel Hernandez, a true leader in parks and recreation, with nearly 40 years of dedicated service across California and Nevada. Daniel's journey began at 15, and by 28, he became one of the youngest parks and rec directors in California. Since then, he's overseen operations for cities like Henderson, Nevada, serving over 2 million residents, and held leadership roles at the state and national levels. He's known for his mentorship, crisis leadership, and for helping rebuild communities after wildfires and floods. Daniel's legacy is built not just on parks, but on the people and professionals he's guided along the way. From championing staff development to shaping policies that make parks more inclusive and resilient, Daniel's impact is deep, lasting, and truly inspiring. So sit back and enjoy this powerful conversation with Daniel Hernandez, right here on the Daily Parks and Rec Show.
It's okay. All right, so we are live here again with the leaders in Parks and Rec, special guest Daniel Hernandez with Clark County, Nevada, retired, but 39 years in the industry. And we were actually talking in the pre-show just about a lot of these AI efficiencies coming in, robotics, that kind of stuff into this industry. And I was saying how I think Parks and Recreation is perfectly positioned for this people searching for quality of life. And I can't think of an industry better positioned to offer quality of life to its citizens, because it's kind of what they've been doing for 100 years. So I think as we become more efficient at generating capital as a species, we're going to be like, oh, let's go to the park today, or let's go, enroll the kids in the softball team. And you're going to see a lot more volunteers hopefully going on. That's my bet.
I hope so. And I think, one of the things coming out of COVID that people realized is the importance of connection time, and how much a lot of us take that for granted. And I think during COVID, you saw a lot more, you can almost call it a boom, of people coming out to parks because they were going crazy being locked up inside. And at least if you go walk around a park or take your dog out, you're getting outside and maybe able to interact with people a little bit at a distance, because it's something that a lot of people, I think, took for granted and didn't realize how important it was until it wasn't there.
Yeah. I saw a scary stat yesterday that by the time a child is 8 years old, they've spent almost a year on screen time.
Yeah, that's not good.
That's, when we're spending so much time plugged into something that's, even if it's not purely entertainment, let's say it's moving more towards education, and I'm a huge educator online, as far as almost everything I learn about real time is I YouTube videos, or asking ChatGPT or Grok, and I'm having a lot of conversations with the screen time. But there gets to be this kind of fatigue or almost burnout that's like, oh my gosh, I just need to unplug. I need to go out into nature. I need to go out into a park, or I'm going to go crazy. That's just being highlighted. Whereas before, my park time, my outdoor time I didn't classify it as a need. It was almost like, well, I can go do something fun. Now I'm feeling like I need my parks. And I think COVID highlighted that. And it kind of woke a lot of us up.
Oh, and it did. And it also showed how unprepared we were to come out of something like that. Now, here in Nevada, I'll give you an example. When we closed everything down, that included the senior centers. And one of the things that maybe a lot of people don't understand unless you're a senior is how important that is for the senior population to socialize and interact. I mean, that's where they go for their friends. Most of them, their kids don't live nearby. They live out of state or out of the country. They rely on the senior center for their social interaction, to go see their friends, their routines. I mean, some of them are right there for their chair yoga classes, or to play that little domino game that they like to play, Mahjong, or
Right.
cards, or a whole host of different activities. Well, what we started to find during COVID is how isolated the senior population was starting to become, and how detrimental it was for them. I mean, you would have people that, of course, we were delivering Meals on Wheels, but they wanted the person to come inside and hang out with them because they were just lonely. So we were one of the lead agencies to start, how can we start to reopen our facilities now that we've slammed the door shut? And it was a challenge to come up with guidelines to how we could reopen that were acceptable to the health district out here. So we got creative. We limited the number of people that can come. Mandatory, as controversial as it was for some folks, needed to be vaccinated. Show your card. We had screens up. You had to wear your mask. So slowly we started to get seniors back out. So I think that was another thing, is it showed how unprepared we can be for certain events. We've spoken earlier, and I mentioned in some of our discussions about the importance of emergency resources, mass care, emergency assistance. I had a background in that through Parks and Recreation with the city of Santa Barbara, my first full-time agency. We had Santa Barbara wildfires in 1989, 90. And we were all trained, fortunately, to assist the Red Cross in shelter operations because our facilities were shelter sites.
Right.
And then Hurricane Katrina, I was deployed out there for almost 3 weeks as a section supervisor. And one of the things we saw, and another example, is people and their pets. You really, again, people really didn't think about it, but none of the shelters in Louisiana at that time were really set up for pets. So you'd go out, and it was heartbreaking to see all these family pets and dogs that have been indoors their whole lives, or always known mom and dad. Everybody's gone, and they're in the streets fending for themselves. So sometimes it takes a tragedy to get to the point where we are now, where if you look at emergency operation plans, they include sections about what are we going to do with livestock, because we have very rural areas here in Nevada. What are we going to do with family pets? Can we have those situations where the pets can be at least near their families? So COVID and emergencies like that can teach us a lot, how to be better the next time something like that happens.
Now, when you came to New Orleans, how did you get that call? How did you get that phone call? Did they just say, hey, we need people from the Parks and Rec system that can manage this crisis? We need manpower.
Well, it's funny. I was actually on vacation in Jacksonville, Florida, when I was watching what happened on TV. And coming from California, since I was already a department head, we were trained through the California Office of Emergency Services to deal with natural disasters, specifically fires and earthquakes. There's a Camp Roberts in San Luis Obispo County where they send city leaders to run simulations and how you're going to respond. You have public works. You have all aspects of emergency operations. And you run through simulations, you stop, you come back, and you see where you can do things better, how you can improve on the different scenarios that they toss at you over 3 days. So I've already had a soft spot, and I saw the importance of being able to go out there and help. And that's one of the things that I think most Parks and Recreation people, we're there to help. We're there to provide services. We're family oriented, we're people oriented. We're there to make your life better. And emergency services to me was a natural fit. So I was on vacation, and I saw what had happened at Katrina. And because of my background and training, I contacted my local Red Cross office. It's like, I got to go. I got to go do something. I can't just sit here. They need people like us that are trained. And so I got back to my agency. At that time, I was a director for a little beach city, or near the beach city, called Arroyo Grande, California. And I talked to my boss, and he's like, go, just go. And so I signed up, and I got deployed the week after Rita hit. And so I went out there. I was stationed out of Baton Rouge. And again, it was an organization. It was organized chaos. Nobody was prepared for the magnitude of that kind of disaster.
I lived in it. I lived in Baton Rouge at the time. And then my company, we had, oh my gosh, I think 80 employees that sheltered in New Orleans in one of these gorgeous homes that we turned into our base of operations. And like you said, it was chaos in every direction.
Oh, it was, I think there was a lot that was learned, not just with animals, but a lot that was learned how to handle an operation that size, because
Yep.
people were showing up to the main headquarters and like, what do we do? Where do we go? And,
Yeah.
they're handing out car keys for folks that really didn't need it. So the structure on inboarding the volunteers was kind of a mess because no one had ever done it before.
Right.
So it was a lot. But at the same time, I got to meet some amazing people and hear some incredible stories of survival. And unfortunately saw some tragedies, some of the aftermath, and of people finding bodies and just the absolute destruction of it. It's one thing to watch it on TV. It's another thing when you're actually there, standing where somebody's home was, and the house is 100 feet to the right.
Yeah.
Of the where the front where the porch was, and so
Right.
the entire
Yeah,
neighborhood was devastated.
it was something to, any major, by the way, I was in New Orleans last night, went to one of my favorite yoga classes and then went out to eat. And New Orleans is fine, ready for tourism. I think we hosted 400,000 people at Jazz Fest over the last week. So we have recovered. But any takeaways? Like, what were your major takeaway lessons from that whole experience at Katrina?
Well, one of the takeaways is I came back and made more of an effort with my staff to make sure we were trained locally for something. So I mandated all my team there to get their first American Red Cross certifications for shelter operations, mass care, because you never know when something's going to happen. There was just so much you could take away from that in terms of, and I hate to say it, like how not to handle a massive emergency. And through all of that, things such as the FEMA training, the FEMA Academy, kind of grew to incorporate so many of the lessons learned from Katrina. So I think from that horrific tragedy, there were a lot of positives that came out that prepared the country better for how to deal with these big regional tragedies.
Is there an example of a big mistake that was made that just no way to find out that it was a mistake, on a misstep, until you're going through it?
Well, I think the one example was pets, how people handled their pets and animals.
Right.
The way the logistics for a lot of the shelters, there was a lot of, and unfortunately, there was a lot of fraud that was involved because there were not enough people out there to handle the logistics, and people kind of really don't understand, I believe, the importance of logistics during these giant operations. A couple examples: you would have these organizations that would come back after 2-3 weeks, say, we opened our building for an evacuation shelter and we've closed it, nobody's here. Red Cross, you need to come out because there's some damage and we want you to pay for it. There were no real good, accurate records that Red Cross actually went out, did a site inspection, opened it up as a shelter, came back, closed it, did another walkthrough to make sure there wasn't damage. And so there was a lot of fraud that way. Yeah. So I think the teams that are going out there now, there's bigger teams, there's bigger scout units that go out to identify what shelters we're going to open, to do the inspections, open up the shelters, have them staffed, and then when they close, be able to do a full-on closeout. So a lot of my job was, my first 2 weeks was basically trying to reconcile a lot of these differences of people saying, I was a shelter, and there was really no record to show that that it actually was or wasn't, because it was so chaotic. People were just opening their doors and here, come on in here, and some weren't, and we're taking advantage of that. So those pre-scout units, I think, became a real big important part, because they were able to identify areas where, wow, how did we spend this much money, or what happened here for this a major amount of loss.
I really like how you said that these big operations are more about logistics. It reminds me of a book I studied for business. It was actually a military book, but it said warriors think about tactics, lieutenants think about strategies, and generals think about logistics. Because it's like, the army runs on its belly. It's you've got to get food and ammunition to the front line, and it doesn't matter how skilled your soldiers are. If they're not fed and they run out of bullets, you're in trouble. And you got to kind of think the same way in natural disaster. If you run out of fuel, if you run out of food in a shelter, what kind of chaos. It doesn't matter how skilled your staff is. If the lights go off, they can't do their job.
Right. If they don't have the resources, they can't succeed in the areas that they're the experts at.
Right. It's literally like, having a surgeon run out of sterile equipment or
Yeah.
masks or run out of, so what were some of the logistic lessons that y'all learned from that?
Pre-planning, having one of the big things that came out were Red Cross trailers. They've expanded their programs. And I think FEMA does it to a different extent, where they have trailers strategically located in different communities, high-risk communities, that are basically big storage bins that you already have meals ready to eat. You have bunks, you have blankets, you have basic first aid kits. So that you have a lot more of the initial reaction needs available at your disposal early on. So I think that was important, because what happened, again, as Katrina as an example, they had to fly everything in. And how do you fly things in when the local airport's flooded? So you're like, landing things out in Lafayette and having to figure out how to drive them into New Orleans or the areas of need.
Yeah. And for those of you that don't know, Baton Rouge went from about 400,000 people to over 1 million people in just a couple of weeks, as New Orleans just basically left to the closest big city, which is about 1 hour away. And it just like when I was going to work, it took about 15 minutes for me to get to work. That 15-minute daily drive became an hour and a half to drive 15 minutes down the same road.
Yeah.
So it was so hard to get anything done in Baton Rouge because it was just solid people. So that's why they had to fly a lot of stuff to Lafayette, because Baton Rouge was just, just crowded, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I ended up having to fly into Lafayette and drive to Baton Rouge so I could get to my assignment, because it was too hard to get into Baton Rouge.
Yeah. And so now how do you apply this to, I know one of the things that we talked about in our prep call was just you being an emergency services specialist from a lot of the things that you've learned, whether it be wildfires, activating rec centers as these emergency centers. And I think when a lot of people look at the value of Parks and Recreation, they don't see this as this is our first line of combating any catastrophe. We have the facilities, we have this is what all managed emergency response people call home base, is Parks and Rec. But you don't think of that when you're thinking, what's the value that Parks and Rec brings? Maybe if you can shed a little light on the role that Parks and Recreation people and facilities play in any natural disaster.
Well, as we start to come out of the disaster and head into the recovery stage, one of the most important lessons is how quickly can we get back into some type of a normal routine, whether it's families, whether it's kids, whether it's seniors. We're naturally suited because in a lot of communities, we run the facilities that are being used as shelters. You do have Red Cross volunteers that come in and help, but with all the cross training that's taken place over the years with Parks and Recreation people, we can run the facility. There's so many aspects in government. Public Works, they clear your roads, they make sure your power's on. Public Safety, Emergency Services, they make sure that we get help where they need it and we keep the peace. Parks and Recreation, we try to help to get back into your normal routine. Now, you might not be able to go home. Your kids may be locked up in a building somewhere, but with our Parks and Rec folks, we can start running activities at these sites. We can start getting the kids, at least getting their minds off of all this tragedy and trying to get them to think about having fun again. It may not be, what's normal, but if you're able to get a group of these kids to go out and start running some basketball games or some card games or just something to get their mind off everything that's gone on and just start to get some semblance of normalcy. Same thing as I stated earlier with COVID and the senior centers. Yes, we were still in the midst of it, but we were starting to show progress and hope that, there's actually a future after all this is said and done.
Yeah. Yeah. And that really is, how, the mental and the emotional, I don't want to say baggage, but stress put on a person when you're just stuck in this emergency state and you're just not getting out of it, and having someone that's trying to get things back to some sense of normalcy and out of this, house on fire scenario, it takes a toll. I think COVID kind of highlighted that, as far as the toll of not being able to get out of the situation. That right. It was, what was it, 2 weeks to flatten the curve turned into over a year.
It did. And one of the things and I have a great team at Clark County. And one of the things during COVID we started to do that we got recognition from the National Association of Counties is a driveway dance party. So we set up one of our bread trucks, which we would normally use to haul our equipment for our special events team, our lighting rigs, our sound systems, and rig it so that we're blasting music out of the back. And then we would advertise a little in advance to the neighborhoods that we'd be driving down. And so we'd have the truck go by, and then the staff would be dancing behind the truck. We'd invite people to come out and dance in their driveways, working with Southern Nevada Health District and some of our other partners. We would hand out emergency, sanitary wipes, masks, the kind of toothpaste, toothbrushes, things that people kind of needed that were in short supply in the stores, just to get people out. And it was such a well-received program because people are like, they've been locked in their house, but at least they have somebody driving that, this creative, innovative, outside the box thinking program, which Parks and Recreation people are perfectly suited to do. I mean, that's kind of how we're wired. It's just like, oh, what can we do to have fun?
Yeah. Now, is there any plan for you to, I know you kind of retired now, and how long have you been retired? It's fairly recent.
I left my position a couple months ago.
Yeah.
So just back in February.
So are you going to stay in retirement? Or are you going to be one of these looking at the next chapter?
No, I'm not going to stay in retirement. There may be some options of even going back if it works out that way. But there's with my background, I just get bored too quickly. I can't just sit around. Even now, it's just like I have my routine. I take my dog for a walk. I go out to the gym. I try to keep busy. I've been doing a lot of reading, but this is going to get old really fast. And so I'll find something else to do, whether my next chapter of life is going back and doing some consulting work, or maybe even going back and I'm volunteering for FEMA or other emergency services. I think I have the background. I think with Parks and Rec people, and especially for a lot of us that have made it a career, it's all about working with others and giving back. That's how we're wired. It's who we are. And so if I have an opportunity at another level or in another area where I can give back in some way, shape, or form or help, I'm going to continue to do that. Yeah.
Well, maybe let's back up a little bit and tell people about your career and how you got into it. I know you were one of the, you said one of the youngest directors in the state, correct?
When I became a director with the city of Carpinteria, I was 32 years old back, and that was 1993. So at that time, there was kind of still the old guard was still around in Parks and Recreation in California. There was approximately 435 or so parks or city, county, special districts, and state agencies out there. Of those, through the leadership programs, the administration programs I was involved in, I was probably one of the 5 youngest directors in the state of California at that time. Most of the people that ended up being my friends and mentors, they were at least a decade older than me.
Now, what do you attribute to that, quick rise?
I think partly my ability to be flexible. I wasn't, I was single. I wasn't married. I didn't have to set up a home family base. So I was able to kind of bounce around early in my career. I started in 1985 as an assistant supervisor for the city of Santa Barbara. So I moved up to Santa Barbara because it's a beach city and I'm in my 20s and it's the 80s. So just how terrible of a life was that?
Yeah.
And after 5.5 years, I got to the point where I wanted to do something different. I wanted to promote. I felt I had the skill set to move up. My boss wasn't going anywhere. So I started exploring options and I got a position with Santa Cruz County as a program manager. And so that's when I became responsible for my first full-time staff, got into aquatics, seniors, after-school programs, sports. And from there, a position in Carpinteria opened up. It's a small little beach city, about 2.5 miles square, 10,000 people. And I came and applied. I had a good interview and related well with the city manager, and I got appointed the position over somebody that been there a little bit longer. And it was just something that seemed to be a good natural fit. And I was there for about 4 years before I moved on to my next assignment, out in Colorado as a division director for an agency of 100,000. And then I came back to California as a Royal Grande Parks and Rec director for almost 10 years. And with each job, I took on different responsibilities. I added more responsibilities and experience. From running youth sports and special events when I started, then aquatics, and then sports, and then seniors. With the Royal Grande, I had a parks division, baseball complexes. Every position gave me an opportunity to learn a different skill set. So I think because I was able to be mobile like that, I was able to apply for jobs as a department head for bigger and bigger agencies, being able to show that, well, this is a bigger agency, but I have background in running facilities, park maintenance, aquatics, overseeing beaches, landscape engineering. And it just progressed to the point where I got to my most recent position, Clark County, and Clark County is one of the largest agencies in the nation. But there's really, in every role, you have to be able to trust the people that work for you. You have to be able to trust your employees, encourage them. If you encourage them, help them come along, learn from their mistakes. You don't go in there and chastise them for making something wrong, doing something wrong in a programming area. Just what do you learn from it? What do you learn not to do next time? How do you improve? They'll work harder for you. If they know you care, they'll work harder because they don't have to worry about somebody standing over their shoulders. So in each and every position, regardless of the size, it's how you treat your employees and the rope you give them to pull the wagon or hang themselves with.
Right. And where did that come from? Is that something you learned along the way, or kind of born with that as a child?
I learned that from my first supervisor in Santa Barbara. Actually, he gave me a lot of leeway to do my job in running the youth sports. Before that, I was working part-time with the Glendale YMCA in Los Angeles area, running the Indian Guide program and their youth sports programs. So I came up there with some background, and my boss basically set me loose. He's like, well, these are your programs. Let me know what you need, and let's go from there. And one of the first things that we did there is the T-ball leagues. And for most people that may or may not know, T-ball is for your littlest kids that are just learning. You put the ball on the tee, and it's basically it's organized chaos. It's kind of fun to watch. It's like watching Pee-wee soccer. It's just like it's amoeba soccer, where all the kids kind of chase in the pack. There's no organized offense defenses. But the T-ball leagues there were, when I started, was about 12 teams, all kids between the ages of 5 and 9. And I saw that as a little bit problematic because those of you that are parents had kids, there's a huge growth difference between a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old. So after a couple seasons, I took some of our coaches, set them aside. It's like, we need to break this up. What can we do to make this transition? So I worked with some of our coaches, and we came up with one of the very first coach pitch leagues in the country. And so now we had the 8 and 9-year-olds in what was really more of a transitional league before they made it up to little leagues. And we worked with the little league organization over time, how they can come and help us with those kids because they're going up into their programs. That became a real popular program. We got some national recognition for that one, but it wouldn't have been possible without my boss's encouragement, without Cliff Lambert's encouragement to allow me to do something like that.
Yeah. And so I'm thinking, as you grow up, not just to the director level, but as you are starting to work with larger and larger agencies, the need to trust and empower your people just grows. Like it's even a greater of a need. But maybe if you can speak on how, the skill set developed over time. How do you learn to, so let's say someone's just listened to what you said and you're like, all right, got it. I got to learn to trust people. But then how did that develop in you? What were some of the real world applications of it?
Very, very slowly. When I started, I was that type where I always felt to do it right, I had to do it myself.
Yes.
And that's kind of, I think, how most people are wired. And that's a hard thing to let go. It took me a little while to let go, but as I grew into my positions, that didn't become it wasn't a feasible model anymore, because you cannot keep your hands at every pot without dropping everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I got in a position where I needed to start to learn to trust staff. And fortunately, through attending national conferences, state conferences, going to leadership workshops, going to how to be a good leader, I started to learn how to let things go, how to identify the staff that I had that was the competent group, the group that could easily take the reins on some of these projects, and start to slowly loosen the reins and give them that responsibility of doing those kind of things. So it took a little bit of time and growth to let that go.
Okay, so here you are, you've learned to let things go, you're learning to trust, you finally get the courage up to trust somebody, and they just totally botch the whole deal. So now, so how do you
that happened? That happened.
Yeah, of
Then
course.
it turns into again, becoming a director and executive. You're always learning, and I had to learn early on that mistakes happen.
Right.
Others can make mistakes and they happen. Um, I had to learn how to address that properly, how to work with the staff to make sure that didn't happen again, depending on the level of mistake or what they can learn, as opposed to immediately reacting, going, "How did you screw that up? I gave you that responsibility." And it's a maturity thing. I don't think as you progress, I think there's a lot of people that may have natural leadership traits, but you still got to learn to develop them.
Yeah.
And so as you learn to develop them, you learn how to work with people when they do screw up, and everybody does. I was still screwing up at my current level. Nothing bad, but just maybe sometimes it's like, oh, maybe I should have handled that differently, or should have handled that person differently, or that liaison for that commissioner's differently. So again, it came with time. Again, I think a lot of the opportunities I was given to attend trainings to actually learn some of these scenarios. In my agencies, particularly my last couple agencies, we started to do workshops, internal workshops that I actually would lead about certain scenarios, how we would deal with certain emergency scenarios with some of my supervisors. We'd set up a no-win scenario, for example, with like a problem parent at a swim lesson, and we'd have staff do the play acting for it. Then we'd have the staff member come out, and how are they going to deal with this? And then we'd critique it. It's like, what, no, he didn't do this wrong, but this is maybe how you could have done it better.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and maybe this can lead us into how do we empower people? So, and this might be investing in your team, ongoing training. Let's talk about that world a little bit, empowering your staff so that they can be trusted.
Well, a good leader eventually will be able to identify your staff, that the ones that you can see are not just there to do the job, but are looking to do more. When I work with my staff here, as I was trying to train them for the next level, you have to explain to people, just doing your job, coming in here, doing your 8 to 5 or your weekend gig or your evening hours for your events and expecting a promotion, that's not how it works. That's just doing your job. To get that next level, you got to show us more. Are you volunteering for activities or big community events that are held not at your location, but are one of the big county activities? Are you going to the fairgrounds to help them with the county fair? And you start to see their staff that's really committed to the profession, not just their jobs, but to the profession and the people they serve. So once you start to identify them, those are the ones you encourage initially to get out there and start attending trainings, because all of us have a budget or a limited budget for people to attend training, and get them to go. Because the other things important about outside training is the ability to interact with other parks and recreation professionals and actually get to see that you're not the only one in this little bubble of these nightmare seniors that come to your center. There's other people that run senior centers that have similar stories, and you get to meet them and talk to them and how they handle it. And they learn as much from that, I think, maybe in some cases more, than attending a sit-down workshop. So identify the staff that you feel have the skill set to move up, as some of my mentors did with me. Encourage them by giving them the opportunity to attend these trainings, and allowing them the flexibility of, if they have some good ideas or things they want to implement at their facilities, help them do it. That encourages them to want to do more and drive and improve.
And maybe speak about, so of course we can send our people to, offsite training. The associations offer a lot. There's places where they can go, maybe get some certifications, but what are some of the in-house things that you can do, with your staff in live with all of your problems to train your team?
Well, as I stated a little bit earlier, we would do these little training scenarios. But the other thing that I worked on internally, and which is unfortunate that the county did not have this type of a program for the general county employees, is teaching them how to interview. There's not a lot of trainings for that, how to prepare for an interview. And it's kind of sad to see how many people are not prepared for an actual formal interview. And things as basic as how you dress when you come into an interview. You don't come to an interview wearing flip-flops and a short and a t-shirt. It's just, that's not how it works. But some people just don't know any better. How you dress, how you answer a question, how to prepare for some of these interviews. So actually, twice a year, I was running workshops for my staff that was interested, where there were 3-hour sessions where we would run interview mock interviews, not just mock interviews, but before we even got to the mock interviews, walk them through everything that you needed to do to prep for an interview. One of the greatest college basketball coaches of all time, a guy named John Wooden, who coached at UCLA, the basketball wouldn't even come on the court for the first week. He's teaching you how to put on your uniform, how to tie your shoes to prevent injury. He's giving you the fundamentals before you even get on the court. And in a lot of instances, we're not teaching those fundamentals for staff to come into an interview panel and succeed because they've never done it before. It's been a lot of years since they've interviewed. So again, we'd give them mock questions. Why do you feel you're one of the best candidates for this job? That's something that a lot of interview panels ask. Your body language. Are you sitting there? Are you twiddling your thumbs? Are you, doing something with your hands? Are you shifting in your seat all the time? All kinds of techniques that when you're on the other side of the panel, you'll notice. So when we do our mock interviews, we were giving the staff the opportunity to sit at both sides of the table and see, oh, okay, I can see where this is coming from. And then we give them little hints about to go home when you practice. I had a bad habit of talking with my hands a lot during an interview process. So I learned by watching myself in the mirror, answering questions, to keep my hands folded in front of me to keep me from doing that because it's a distraction to a panel. Yeah. So that's just an example of what I would do internally to prep my staff. Now, whether they use that skill set to interview and promote through my department or leave my agency and get a job somewhere else, that's absolutely great because I want them to grow, whether it's with us or with another agency. So that was just one of the things that I always made sure I found time to do with my staff.
So are there any other areas, job interview is great. But I'm thinking, how to prepare for your day, as far as showing up early, communicating. What are some other obvious skills that maybe we never get taught on how to time manage? And so here you are, maybe you give the only time management class that your maintenance staff has ever gotten in their life, but are there some other areas that you'd speak on as well?
Well, patience, learning to patience and dealing with difficult people. I mean, we all know in Parks and Recreation, not everybody's, a saint and polite and courteous and respectful. And for a lot of people, it's learning how to deal with that because in most instances, my normal personality isn't one where if somebody gets in my face and yells at me that I would sit there, smile, and just kind of like, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. Right. Unfortunately, as a Parks and Rec director, I needed to do that. I couldn't tell people exactly what was on my mind. Right. But when you have a lot of these younger staff, they may not know. When you have a 25, 26-year-old that's in there that's never experienced that, you kind of have to help them along and teach them how to deal with that so that they don't feel intimidated or scared. And again, those go from doing some mock workshops with the staff. And a lot of the in-service that we did, even those that I wasn't responsible for, I would help direct staff. Well, let's work, go out there and teach staff. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. You're out in the field now. Work with your staff how they can interact with difficult people. And I think that's a really big skill set because if you cannot interact with difficult people, you're probably not going to be able to move up if that's your goal, because there's a lot of people that are great in Parks and Recreation that come in as a coordinator or a supervisor, love that role, and they make tremendous impacts and differences in their agencies in that role. But if you want to move up as a middle manager, your ability to manage those kind of situations with difficult people has to be a priority, especially when you get up to levels of when you're dealing with elected officials, because that's a whole different animal that requires that patience, a skill set, and communication that may not come naturally to a lot of folks.
Yeah. Now maybe let's kind of talk about the managing of, say, a small park system, medium size, on up to one of the largest in America. So just to go to the frame of that, Clark County, Nevada, what, 2.2 million people? That's one of the top 20 or 30 largest counties in America. Yes. But you didn't start there. So what were the differences between, I've got a smaller community, mid-size, maybe a couple 100,000 on up to 2 million?
The overwhelming part with that is the scope of it. The duties really aren't too different. In the other positions, I was working with elected officials, and elected officials have their own personalities, their own egos. They can be far left, far right, centrist, trust government, hate government. So that doesn't change. The ego might get a little bit bigger, the bigger the organization. But that's a consistent skill set. How do you work with your elected officials, whether it's a town of 10,000 or a town or 2.2 million? How do you work with your elected officials? So that's a constant, and that boils down to communication, patience, the ability to facilitate discussions with their liaisons and to be able to get a majority. And even then, you're also having to look and work in depending on your agency with elected officials that are voted district wide. And in those cases, you have different demographics and communities that they serve with different values, or city councils that are citywide at large, so that they all share the same problem. Managing a lot of people. Fortunately, I had a good deputy director that I was able to bring on, a couple managers, so I did have the organizational structure to manage that, so I didn't have to worry about so much of the day-to-day, which really, as a director at this level, you really can't. You just don't have the opportunity to do that. And that's the biggest difference. In the smaller agencies, you're able to get more into the trenches. A bigger agency like this, you kind of have to be able to step away and trust more people to be able to get that done. And that to me was always a challenge, because I like being out in the field. I mean, that was always something I enjoyed.
Well, maybe let's talk about picking a team. So if you're building a team, choosing the people that you're going to go to battle with, what are some tricks of the trade, things you've learned over, how to pick a good team, what you look for in support staff?
In my support staff, I look for ability and maybe some skill sets that I may not be the strongest in, that I want some of my managers and my support staff to have. I mean, I may not be the landscape architect genius, but if I have somebody in my public works division or my parks division that's able to walk through some of these issues, that's a person I'm looking at, because I'm not, I know a lot. I know a little bit in a lot of different areas, but I'm not, apart from one or two subjects, I'm not the subject matter expert in every area. So people that share my ability to trust their staff, work with others, believe in the organization. I'm not even that big of a fan of loyalty, because loyalty does not translate to me to a good employee. Loyalty is great, but I'd rather have a skill set of an individual that I know has good leadership traits, is able to delegate, is able to trust their team. And that comes with time. I was here a year as deputy director before I was promoted to the director position. So I was able to see how my different staff worked. And so as time went by, I was able to identify the skill sets that my current management team, or the one I just recently had, their skill sets and their abilities to make the place better and to set the organization up for success after I left, because that falls into succession planning, because none of us are in our roles forever.
Yeah. And then I've also heard you mention several times communication. So touch a little on the communication skill set. Maybe even start back when you didn't have a good communication skill, and how that changed and evolved over to where you are today.
Well, how you communicate is that can be a very painful lesson early on. One of the stories I like to relate to people is when I was a young director at Carpinteria, we had a little bit of a controversy where our city manager at that time was a big supporter of the EST program. Not the EST program, the Forum, which was an offshoot of EST, which was a personal development, controversial personal development program and seminar. And so there was about 3 department heads that he sent to attend this training. And the community was kind of a little weird about that, because they want to know why are you sending staff to these kind of developments when we should be sending them to professional work trainings. Well, as part of this, at this time, there was a reporter that was covering the city, and she was cute. She was single. I was single, and so we went out for coffee, and we just started talking. And one of the lessons I learned then is, like, nothing's off the record, because she asked me about the training program and if I was going to go to do the follow up, which was $500 on my own accord. And I'm like, for $500, I can just go to Cabo and get just as much out of that.
Yeah.
Sadly, 2 days later, on the top half of the fold of the local section of the Santa Barbara News Press, the article comes out with my quote. So needless to say, my boss was not really happy with me. So that's an example of how not to communicate.
Right.
So I had to learn what to say, what not to say. But as a director, again, there were times where maybe I should have shared more information with my staff to clear up ambiguous directions from elected officials or my boss in terms of how to do something, or maybe because I thought I could do it, I wouldn't ask for clarification, and I'd go off, and then they'd come back and say, "Well, why? That's not what I asked you to do." And so as time went by, it was like learning. Okay, if I want my staff to succeed, I got to be able to communicate to them clearly what it is our end goal is going to be. And again, it was an evolving process. Over time, I think I've gotten pretty good at it, and being transparent as well. I mean, it's not just communicating, but if there's something going on, giving them the backstory as to why we're trying to get to this end result.
Yeah. And so a lot of times we talk about communication skills in general, but how is communication different when you're a public figure or when you're working for, as a public servant, that it's just a different level?
It's as a public servant, as an executive, you're always under the gun, and this is where one of the biggest differences between a small agency and a large agency is. You can kind of vanish a little bit in the community in a larger agency. Not everybody knows who you are, but you get in these smaller communities or mid-sized communities, you're running into people in lines at the supermarket. You're running into them at your local pub. So it's always are on. How you behave, how you interact, what you say, can get back to a lot of people very quickly. So as a public servant, you're never really off the clock if you're in your environment. Depending again on the size of the agency, even then it doesn't matter. There might be always somebody around who knows who you are, and what you say can very easily become something negative and impactful for you professionally if it gets back to your boss or an elected official.
Yeah. And so are there any other lessons that we can give, maybe just on how to people wanting to be a director? What would be some advice that you would give a young man or young woman that wants to be a director?
Well, I always tell them, be careful what you wish for, because you might get it.
Right.
It's a commitment. I think regardless of the size agency, you're always on the clock. You're getting phone calls at night. You're getting phone calls on the weekends. You're not, a 40-hour work week employee. You are exempt, which means you're going to events at night. You're going to weekend events. You're going to council meetings. It's a time commitment. It's a time and energy commitment, because that's your role now. The elected officials, your city manager, your county manager has entrusted you to oversee that operation, and it's not, an 8 to 5 operation. You've got to know that going into it, because you're not going to succeed if you try to deal with the position as if it's an 8 to 5 job. It's not it. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It can be extremely rewarding when you lead a large organization and you see the difference you made, whether it is in some new programs that you've allowed your staff to create that will be there long after you're gone, or if you're involved in the development of a park or a community center, something with a plaque on the door that shows that you played a small role in what happened. Those are the rewarding parts of the job. Those are the fun parts. The politicking is always a challenge, and I believe that's something that not a lot of time is spent on the politics part of the job, but it's difficult at times, especially if you're in a community that is very hands-on elected officials or divided, as a lot of this country is now, with an elected board that is a 3-2 swing district, or 4-3 between that one vote, and two entirely different political philosophies. Be prepared for those kind of things, and how are you going to work on those kind of things? Because when it's all said and done, at the end of it, I'd be sitting in my office sometimes looking out my window, and my staff is out there running games with the kids, and I'd almost give anything to be back in their shoes when I'm sitting dealing with, writing a multi-million-dollar budget and trying to figure out how to sell it to the electeds, knowing that the budget is tight. But I fully believe that we need these funds to do these things to serve our community.
What's the difference between, and I'm glad you brought this up, because sometimes, when you're sailing the ship, but you're not actually working on the front line, maybe with the kids and coaching, and maybe that's why you do why you got into what you do. Is there were there times when you felt like you just lost that lost yourself into maybe the financials and the politics and stuff, and maybe there was a time you just wanted to get back to working inside the community a little bit more?
Oh, absolutely. And fortunately, with an agency like this, I had those opportunities. We would do food pantries. So every, once a
Mm,
month, I try to get out there just so I can get out in the front lines and interact face to face with people. That
mm,
might not be something that every agency may have, but uh, if you have those opportunities, definitely take them. They don't come out as often. Um, and it's not your role to try to be out there all the time. Otherwise, you'd have no life between trying to run a department and be at all these events.
right.
October, I got a super patient girlfriend because last year in the month of October, I had 17 Halloween events I went to in addition to my normal job. Did I need to be there? No, but I wanted to show support to my staff.
Yeah.
Um, and even in those instances, I couldn't be the one handing out candy. I couldn't be the one doing it because I had to go to the next place. And
Mhm.
so yeah, there's a little bit of a detachment that happens with that, but it goes with the job. If you want to be a director, it's just going to be more challenging for you to be able to find that time to be one-on-one. I
Yeah.
coached basketball for a number of years in Arroyo Grande. We consolidated our youth basketball program of over 400 kids, and I was coaching one of the teams just because I loved to coach. But it got to the point where I just did not have the available time to do that anymore, and I
Mm,
miss it to this day. I still miss it. But it is, it's a consequence of signing up for the role as an executive that I have.
mm. Now, how important is it for you to be seen by your staff? Just on the front lines, visiting them and having them see you as part of the team.
I think it's vitally important. I think your ability to go out there and not just for the big events. And this is what I tell my staff. It's one thing to go out there when they have their big, shiny Halloween event. It's another thing to find time to get out there during a normal day and just stop by and say hi, or, how's it going? I heard your daughter had a baby. Congratulations. And just go in on a day to day. I think it's important for them to see you because you're showing you care about them, that you're taking an interest in them. I'm not going to the facilities in the middle of the week with a clipboard to find what's wrong. I'm just going to see them because I think it's important for them to see me.
Mm, yeah. So are there any other takeaways from, and the next thing I wanted to get into, maybe we can lead into this one, but the difference between running a county and a city, because I think you've done both.
Mhm.
And what are the big differences that you see there?
The big difference in counties is they tend to be more district. Bigger cities are the same way too, so it's the same challenge, uh, in which it's harder to develop a consensus with a district organization versus an at-large organization. In some instances, say you want to develop a new program in a specific neighborhood that deals with community outreach for some of your more at-risk, economically challenged populations, but you only have enough money to do it in one area in your current budget, but you have two other county commissioners or county supervisors that want the same program in their areas.
Mm,
So some of the challenges are you need to set up that pilot program to see if it works and you're able to spread it, but then you're dealing in a dynamic where you have other elected officials that want to see it in their jurisdictions as well. So it's
mm,
it's juggling. Sometimes that's the kind of juggling that is difficult or more challenging. I won't say difficult. It's just more challenging in a district style community, whether it's a large city or a county versus a smaller agency that may have just 5 county council members, where you can do one program and they're all on the same page because it's just one city. It's just one. They're not representing an area. That's the
mm,
biggest challenge. How you deal with some of your populations in a district setting too, because we go from districts here that are predominantly, you can go from one county district, which is more of a upper class area, to the east side, which is more economically challenged, to the north or south, which are heavily rural, and they all have their own personalities and how you interact with those communities.
mm.
So that, again, it's more challenging than it is difficult, but you need to understand the people you're working with and how to address some of those needs so that you're able to get what you want. And then maybe as time goes by, get them to work together. I mean, ideally, maybe if you have a facility that's halfway between two districts, that's a good step in the right direction.
Hmm. Now, how did y'all deal with maybe these two thoughts of trends versus disruption? So you've got something that this is the old way, the new way is going to replace it forever. And then you've got these trends where it's this way one way, it's the next trend's this. And so you almost have to just cycle through these trends. How does that work inside of, city government, Parks and Rec?
Oh, well, that's a big question. That changes a lot. It's the latest trend that has turned out to be probably a game changer in our profession and how we design facilities is pickleball.
Mm-hmm.
8 years ago, nobody really cared about pickleball. Now
Right.
you can't build a pickleball complex fast enough. But that seems to be an activity and a sport that's not going to go away. It's geared for an older population. This is an aging country. And learning how to deal with that and cope with those challenges of those facilities. I mean, people want them, but they don't want them in their neighborhood. Why? They don't like the popping noise of when the ball hits the paddle. So these are things where you're gonna strategically put a facility that everybody wants without upsetting a segment of the community that lives in that area, creating friction out of the gate. So that's one example, but it's very important. And again, this goes from being able to have supervisors or people above you that recognize and acknowledge the fact that training is important. That the way you get information is by going to trainings or going to workshops and going to conferences, meeting with other professionals of your same caliber, and seeing what are some of the challenges, what are some of the trends they are seeing, and how are they dealing with them.
Now, let's talk about the associations, both national and state. How involved were you in those, and how important do you think they are to the ongoing training and networking of the industry?
Well, with California, I was a lot more active with the California Parks and Recreation Society. I was very active in the district level. I was district president for the California Central Coast. I was an administrative section representative. At the national level, less so, but I was on the board of regents for the National Parks and Recreation Association Revenue Management and Marketing School that was held in La Jolla, California. I was on that board for 7 years. A lot of my friends / students in those programs at that time went on to become directors themselves, which has been just great to see. A lot of these, and I called them kids back then because I was in my probably early 30s, and they were like fresh out of college. Entry-level positions that are now administrative. A lot of it was the networking for them. A lot of it that they learned their skill set with us, but a lot of them was also the networking. I think it's important, as I stated earlier, it's vital for people who love what they do and the challenges they have, learning from others like that are at their level, how they deal with those same challenges, that they may not get that exposure in just their local organization. But how are people in a large agency like Philadelphia dealing with some of the inner city issues that we're having to deal with on the east side of Vegas? One of my staff went to meet with our county sheriff to the city of Boston to discuss some programs that were taking place in some of these higher risk communities. And it actually came back that the city of Boston started to take hints and ideas from what we were doing here in Clark County as well, which never would have happened if we wouldn't have encouraged those types of networking and outreach and communications with other organizations.
Yeah. And now a lot of times people have a tough time pitching the value of going to this to the people who are going to be paying for it. So if you're a director, you like to take 3 or 4 people, now you got to go ask for funding. What were there different ways that you were able to pitch to maybe elected officials or city managers to say, hey, this is important, here's why, here's the takeaways? What were some of the things that you used to get funding to go to these events?
Well, we had a built-in budget, but a good example is COVID, how agencies recovered out of COVID. There was talk to cut back on some of our budget and spending, but I fought to make sure we kept it, if not expand it more, because people are trying to figure out, for example, what happened to all the lifeguards. Well, COVID kind of shut down lifeguard classes at the time that it did. Pools ended up closing. That market's never come back. How do we find out what other agencies are doing? Well, you can read about it, or you can actually go to some of these trainings and seminars where other professionals, other aquatic staff, other organizations in the same boat are having these big roundtables. How are we going to address this? What's your community doing in terms of outreach? What's your community doing? One of the unique challenges we have here in Las Vegas is we have the resort corridor, which has 50, 60 swimming pools, and those casinos pay $3 to $5 more an hour for their lifeguards than we're able to offer. after school programs? How are we dealing with the new requirements with regards to dealing with kids that may have autism or special needs? So I try to sell it to them. It's like, if you want us to address these concerns that you're hearing from the elected officials about what we're doing with after school programs or aquatics, we need to send people to keep them on top of current trends and meet with others that are going through the same things to share ideas and solutions and bring them back here and implement them.
Yeah.
And for the most part, they've been very receptive.
Yeah. And I think that's an opportunity we have, creating this network here for Parks and Recreation, similar to how, I equate it to ESPN creating a network for sports people to just watch even reruns of old sports games. I think it's important that the Parks and Rec community has a network as a place to deposit a lot of this information that can be accessed later. Because, I've been to so many Parks and Rec conventions, and I'm sitting in class. I'm like, God, the whole nation needs to hear this message.
Uh-huh.
And I know it's just like 50 of us. And so that's one of the things I wanted to do with this, is to create a content library so we can get a lot of this information out in the general public as just a free library, free information kind of thing. So anyway, I appreciate you coming on today and sharing all this 39 years of wisdom that you've stacked up. And hopefully you don't stay retired too long, get back in the game with that talent you have.
Well, thanks, Craig. I really do appreciate it. And again, it's not just me. There's a lot of people like me that are out there. And I just hope they all decide to take the same opportunity to share what little we know with others and hopefully make a difference out there. And again, thank you for this opportunity. I've really enjoyed this hour that's gone very, very quickly.
I know. I was looking at the clock and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got, I had like 4 other topics to cover, and I think I had 10 minutes to go through them. So lots of great stuff. Appreciate your service to America, and just making our park system safe. And just as a fellow Louisianian, thank you for coming and help us out in our time of need, man. We were struggling as a state, and that definitely is in New Orleans.
I loved it out there. We still come out to New Orleans regularly. I mean, I just put a special place in my heart for Louisiana.
Yeah. Well, if you ever find yourself in New Orleans again, look me up. I'd love to kind of show you around, and just, maybe we can go grab a coffee, beer, bagel, you name it.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, man. Well, have a great weekend and a great week, and appreciate you coming on the show.
You too, Craig. Take care.
Take care. All right. So that was Daniel Hernandez over at Clark County, 39 years in Parks and Rec, one of the youngest Parks and Rec directors in California at his time, and eventually found his way to managing an agency that had 2.2 million people. And then I love the story of him coming to New Orleans during Katrina and after Katrina to help us, because, really Parks and Rec, and I don't think this is said enough, that the Parks and Rec departments, the facilities they have, are ground zero for recovering and even dealing with these catastrophes that hit, whether they're wildfires or earthquakes or, hurricanes, you name it. The Parks and Rec department has the staff and has the facilities to kind of deal with a lot of this stuff. And so when we're looking for what is the value that Parks and Rec brings, let's not forget that in our time of trouble and time of need, these are the people, these are the facilities that are the go-to front line. So let's make sure that we're not cutting those services, and that this is definitely essential services. But I also like how Daniel and many others have been presenting Parks and Rec as really the preventative side of our cities, that a lot of the reactive side from police and fire, they're reacting to problems, but preventing problems, creating strong communities, having connection in your community, and being surrounded by people that care for you, and that having these programs where we have strong minds and strong bodies. I'm thinking of all the coaches and youth sports and stuff like that, and the senior centers. A lot of that stuff is happening in the daycares and the families and stuff. When we have healthy, vibrant communities, we prevent a lot of the problems that, if we didn't have those things, would find themselves in the world of, corrective services or police. having to show up and do stuff. And so I think the more that we invest in that part of our community, the less problems we have on the back end where we're really reacting to things gone wrong versus making sure that we're doing things right. And so I'm loving discovering and helping to pitch this message of what are the value that Parks and Rec brings to our communities, because I'm starting to see more and more of maybe what I didn't see before. And so, Daniel, I appreciate your service. Appreciate you coming on today, sharing with us everything that you did in life. And if there's any of you out there, similar experiences as Daniel, would love to have you on the show to share everything you've learned with the Parks and Rec community. Okay, so about the other shows, we have this Thursday, the first ever Youth Sports Mastery. That's going to be every Thursday at 1:30. Me and my co-host Aaron Locks are going to put together a weekly show with youth sports, coaching, the parents. If you're in programming for youth sports, we got you a weekly show where we're going to interview some of the best people in this arena, some of the movers and shakers, best practices. We know youth sports is such a big part of what Parks and Rec is. Of course, a lot of us have come through youth sports and have been affected by the coaches that run those, and some of the teammates are, some of our best friends that we've had in life. And so we wanted to give that at least a weekly show where we're, that one topic is so broad and it's so impactful for our families and our communities that, anyway, every Thursday, 1:30, don't miss out. Also, we have our young professional show every Friday. That's coming along so nicely. I think we have our 5th show coming up this Friday. So don't miss on that. If you're a young professional, if you're an intern, please consider coming on the show. If you have an intern or you're a teacher, a professor, a mentor, and would like to come and contribute to that, either on an organizational level or just to, come and speak as to how y'all work with interns. And one thing we're trying to do, and I think this is a need in the community that we need to, that at least the Daily Parks and Rec show is going to contribute to, is what does make a good internship program. So if you believe that you have a strong internship program, and when I say internship, imagine you're looking for a college kid to maybe that they need credit, an internship credit. You're going to show them the ropes, whether it's paid or unpaid. And I know there are a few because I've spoken to a few of them, but for the most part, I would say, I'm still learning here, but I would say that a lot of Parks and Rec systems don't have very well defined and very well developed internship programs. But if we really want to reach out to that next generation and have them see Parks and Recreation as a strong career path that they could even consider in high school, then having strong internship programs across all agencies, I think is a great recipe for success. And so we've already got a few, and we're going to get a few more. But if you think you have a strong internship program, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let's chat about it, and then let's see if we can maybe put together a framework, and maybe even you come on to the show and explain how you recruit interns, what that internship program looks like. A great example was last Friday, Molly's internship program with Alice that came on. And then I've got another couple of individuals that also have pretty robust, strong internship programs. So we want to highlight those and give people a kind of framework to work off of. Aside from that, we're still launching. This is our third week of the facilities maintenance show. Shout out to Joseph this morning and Daniel tomorrow. So looking forward to that. Continuing to grow that show, which is basically 4 days a week. So anyway, a lot of exciting stuff happening in the Daily Parks and Rec show as we build out this media company for Parks and Recreation. Having a blast doing it, loving all the support that we're getting from the community. We're going to keep it going. Okay, so that's all I have for y'all today. I'll see y'all tomorrow for the morning show, Facilities Maintenance. Y'all have an awesome day. Love you guys. Bye.
The future of parks and recreation is here, and it starts with you. Welcome back to the Daily Parks and Recreation Show, where we bring you the latest insights, trends, and conversations shaping the world of parks and recreation. Today, we're diving into something that's shaping the future of our industry, Young Professional Networks, or YPN. If you love your job and love the parks and recreation community and are looking to connect with the next generation of leaders, this episode is for you. YPN is where driven, passionate professionals come together to connect, grow, and make a real impact. It's not just about networking, it's about building the future of our communities. Why join YPN? Career growth and mentorship. Learn from the best in the industry. Innovative ideas and collaboration. Be part of the next big movement. Leadership development. Take charge, make decisions, and create change. Whether you're just starting out or looking to take your career to the next level, YPN is your gateway to success. From exclusive networking opportunities to cutting-edge industry insights, this is where you build your legacy. Because the future of parks and recreation starts with you.